Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Joshua, and we're going to be starting chapter 2 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, this second chapter of Joshua is the account of the spies being sent out to Jericho. Joshua sends these two men not to spy out the whole land, but just simply one city. And these men were responsible to tell only Joshua what they had seen. Probably because Joshua remembers 40 years ago when the 12 spies came back, the whole congregation was there. They listened and they murmured. And because of that, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Joshua was saying, go see Jericho, come back, report to me and me only, and that's it. These men were risking their lives, yet to serve the children of Israel, they obeyed Joshua, and they trusted that God would protect them as he has the whole nation of Israel for these past 40 years. Now, as we get into this, I'm telling you, I was really excited. I learned a lot in what I'm going to be teaching now. And I hope you're as excited about it as I am when I learned on it. So Joshua chapter 2, verse 1 says, And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, Go view the land, even Jericho. And they went, and they came into an harlot's house named Rahab, and they lodged there. Now, it says here, they were sent out of Shittim. Now, that'll probably be the whole message here is going to be right here in this place called Shittim. Now, let's consider this place that's called Shittim, where they've been camping now. It is also known by the name of Abel Shittim. It is located in the plains of Moab, and it sits about 8 to 10 miles from the Jordan River on the east side of the Jordan River. If you want to get out a map, stop the video and get a map out and open it up to your map of Israel. You can do that because this is very important, very exciting. And so if you want to get a map, you can. Now, in Numbers chapter 33 and verse 49, Shittim is the place that the children of Israel camped in before crossing the Jordan River. But we need to see what Israel was doing before they settled in Shittim in order to fully have a picture of what it was like. So in order for us to do that, we got to go to Numbers chapter 21. Numbers 21, and we're going to be reading some verses out of here. Numbers 21, verses 21 through 35. Now, in verse 21, let's read verse 21. It says, And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites. All right. Now, the Amorites possessed the land directly on the east side of the Dead Sea, and about 20 to 30 miles up the east side of the Jordan River. If you got a map or an atlas, and you find the Amorites and the land that they possessed just before Israel conquered them, then you'll see where I'm talking about. So now verse 22 and 23, it says, Let me pass through your land, and we will turn into the fields or into the vineyards, and we will not drink of the waters of the well, but we will go along by the king's highway until we be past your borders. And Sihon would not suffer Israel to pass through his border, but Sihon gathered all the people together and went out against Israel into the wilderness. And he came to Jahaz, and fought against Israel. Now, Jahaz here is about 25 miles directly east of the Dead Sea on the border of Moab. So he gets his army and he comes to Jahaz to fight against Israel. Now let's read verse 24. And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword and possessed possessed his land from Arnon unto Jabbok, even unto the children of Ammon, for the border of the children of Ammon was strong. Now, Israel defeats the Amorites. And basically, the Jews now, the Israelites, took control of that whole country, their whole country. Now, Israel possesses the land that is directly east of the Dead Sea. It's bordering the Dead Sea. It's right on the shores of the Dead Sea and also up part of the Jordan River, north of the Dead Sea. Now, verse 25, and Israel took all these cities. And Israel what? They dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all the villages thereof. So, not only do they take the land, but they also begin to take up residence in their cities. And I said last lesson, remember, that not all the Israelites went into the promised land. A lot of them settled. The ones that were of the 2.5 tribes, they started settling in the land, in the unpromised land on the east side of the Jordan River and of the Dead Sea. Now, let's skip down to verse 33. And it says here, and they turned and went up by the way of Bashan. And Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. Now, the land of Bashan is, again, on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. And Edrei is about 40 miles east of the southern tip of the Sea of Galilee. Therefore, the children of Israel would have to travel. They'd have to travel about 70 miles north from the land of the Amorites to go up to do battle with Og. Now, we read these things and we don't have a map and we don't figure this out. But I took time to study all this stuff and see and get the map and the atlas out and figure out all this stuff. Yeah, they traveled from after they defeated Sihon. Yeah, they had to travel. And then Og now, he's coming out against them, but they have to travel 70 miles north to do battle against Og. They defeat Og and his army, and now they take all of his land. This means that the Israelites now they possess all the land on the east side of the Dead Sea and all the way up to the top of the Sea of Galilee. From the Dead Sea all the way up to the Sea of Galilee. They own everything on the east side. And this would be the land of the 2.5 tribes that they would take. So they defeat them, and now they have their land. Now, obviously, they are not going to take the land and then leave it empty for another nation to come in and possess it. They didn't defeat these armies and then just leave it empty and say, well, we'll come back after we help, our brothers gain their land. No. They started going in. Therefore, they started inhabiting the land and protecting it as soon as they got it. As I said all of this in order to show you that when the children of Israel camped at Shittim and they went over the Jordan, that there were a number of Jews who never went into the promised land. It was promised to them. But there was many Jewish people, women and children, who stayed behind to set up homes and things. They never experienced the promised land. the 2.5 tribes started settling in their land. And they had some of their army stay behind in order to protect their land. There were a number of Jews who separated from those who were going to the promised land. Like I said, a number of them separated from the main group of the Israelites going into the promise. They separated and they started possessing the land on the east side. As we continue our study of this place called Shittim, we go to Numbers chapter 22 and verse 1, where it seems that Shittim is the place that is being spoken of. From Numbers, this is important, from Numbers chapter 22 to Joshua chapter 2, where we are now, it's about 1 year's time. So it's about a year's time in that span. God has brought the children of Israel to the place where they are now getting ready to go over to the promised land. But before they go over to the promised land, you can bet on it, Satan has a major attack against them in Shittim. Satan's coming up with a plan. He knows God's going to take him over, and he doesn't want. So he's coming up with a plan to try to stop them or hinder them from going over. Let's see what it is. Now, I'm not going to go into any great detail, but Numbers chapter 22 through 24 deal with Balak, the king of Moab, which was right next door to the land of the Amorites. Balak hires Balaam to come and to curse the Israelites. Now, out of fear, he presumes that his army will not be able to defeat the Jews. And he's probably right, because God's on their side. So he thinks of a plan to defeat them. Ultimately, Balak is being motivated by Satan's kingdom. Satan knows that God has purpose to bless the children of Israel, and that his Gentile armies will not be able to defeat them. So Satan decides to turn the table on the children of Israel, and instead he's going to have God himself chasing his own people. If Satan can't defeat him, Satan's going to try to get God to defeat his own people. Now you may say, how is he going to do that? Very easily, watch. Balaam is probably frustrated that God would not allow him to curse the Jews and make lots of money from the king, from Balak. Therefore, I think Balaam decides to get back at God. Balaam, there's more involved in this, but Balaam was a soothsayer, and he made money off of his predictions. And people would hire him to pronounce curses on things. And so Balak hires Balaam to come down and curse the children of Israel. But God says, you're not making any money on this one. You're going to say only what I say. You're not coming out with any money at all, because they're my people. And I think when it was all over, Balaam decided he was going to get back at God. Balak takes Balaam to 3 different places in order to curse Israel. In Numbers chapter 22 and verse 41, he takes him to the high places of Baal. And then in Numbers 23 verse 14, the second place he takes him is the field of Zophim. And the third place he takes him is in Numbers 23:28, is the top of Peor. Now, that's important. The top of Peor. All 3 times, Balaam blesses Israel. But it seems that possibly more took place at Peor than what we see in Scripture. You may say, didn't Balaam pronounce this great, tremendous blessing on the children of Israel on Mount Peor? Yes, he did. But there's a lot, I think there's more that happened on Mount Peor than what's written here, and you'll see why. Balaam, now listen, Balaam lives in an area called Pethor. Balaam's house, or his home, is in Pethor, which is about, listen, which is about 280 miles northeast of the north end of the Sea of Galilee, which means that Balaam lives way, way, way north. If you think when Balak said to his servants, go get Balak, I want him to come and curse, if you think Balaam lived, like 5 miles away, no. I mean, Balaam lived about 280 miles north of the Sea of where the north part of the Sea of Galilee. I mean, he was far away. So it took weeks before these servants went to Pethor, got Balaam, and came back. Now, from Balak, Balaam is about 500 to 600 miles away. So it would take several weeks for Balaam to receive Balak's message, then make the journey down to Moab. So remember, it's 280 miles from the north of the Sea of Galilee, but if you're at the north of Sea of Galilee and you go south to where Balak is, it's still another 100 and some miles down. So we're talking a 500 to 600 mile journey for these servants to go all the way up to get Balaam and to come down and bring him down. But according to Numbers chapter 25, verse 18, chapter 31, verse 16, and Joshua 22 and verse 17, God told Moses that he wants the Midianites to be vexed. Why? Why does God want the Midianites to be vexed? Because they vexed the children of Israel and deceived them where? Where did they deceive the children of Israel? It says what? In the matter of Peor. In the matter of Peor. It means that there's something else took place on that mountain of Peor more than just Balaam blessing the children of Israel. Something else took place. God wanted the Midianites vexed because of what happened on Mount Peor. Now, it seems that something deceitful happened involving Balaam and the Midianites on the top of Peor. Where were the Midianites with Balak and Balaam? Did Balaam conceive in his mind a way to curse Israel using the Midianites while he was on Peor? Probably that's what happened. Balaam's probably thinking to himself, God's not going to let me make any money off of this. Well, I'll get him back. I know how to get the children of Israel. I'll get God again. I'll get their own God against them. Now, we do not know these answers, but we do know that God had something against the Midianites and Balaam because of what happened on Mount Peor. Now, you can read read Numbers 25. Numbers 25 and verse 18, and it says, for they vex you with their wiles, wherewith they have beguiled you in the what? In the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of the prince of Midian, their sister, which was slain in the day of the plague, for Peor's sake. So there was more that went on Mount Peor than simply Balaam's blessing of the children of Israel. The deceptive plan of Satan through his servant Balaam is seen in Numbers 25, verses 1 through 15. Numbers 25 is a picture of how no enemy can ever curse a work of God. Listen, no enemy can curse the work of God. Only sin and spiritual fornication can stop a work of God. And that's what's going to happen. Satan's goal was to get the people to sin so that God himself would have to chastise them. And you know what? It worked. It worked. That's exactly what happened. Now, Numbers 25, verses 1 to 15. You know what? We'll start that we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Numbers 25, verses 1 to 15. And we're going to read verse 1. And it says here, "And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab." Now, it was while they were in Shittim that the sin began. This was a strong effort by Satan to hinder the children of Israel, or maybe even stop the work of God. We can probably be sure that Balaam had something to do with this. Maybe he knew some of the laws of Moses and decided to get back at God by getting Israel to disobey God's laws so that God would have to deal with them. And it exactly happened the way it planned out. Now let's go down to verse 9. And it says, "And those that died in the plague were 24,000. 24,000 people were killed. God killed 24,000 of the Israelites. This was a high price to pay for getting involved with the Moabites and the Midianites. But God still was going to get his people into the promised land. God will not allow Satan to stop his plan. And that's just it. He's not going to allow it. So he says here in verse 9, those that died were sent out. We're going to go back to Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. "And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim." Now, the Hebrew tense here is past tense, and it means he had sent. So it means that Joshua probably sent them out on the same day that God to Joshua to get ready to cross, that God told Joshua to get ready to cross the Jordan River. They were told to go and to view both the land around Jericho and also the city itself. Now, it says here also, and the set out of Shittim 2 men to what? To spy secretly. To spy secretly. Now, it seems to imply that Joshua didn't want any of the Israelites to know, so that there would not be another uprising of what happened 40 years ago. And then it says here, "Go view the land, even Jericho." And they went, and they came into an harlot's house named Rahab, and they lodged there. So although there are scholars that like to believe that the term harlot means an innkeeper, yet the Bible, even in the New Testament, refers to her as a harlot. The word is porne, and it means prostitute. Now, I don't think God would have harlot attached to her name and to her life if she was just an innocent innkeeper. I don't think God, because we're going to see that God blesses her. God blesses her. And God's not going to allow her to be called a harlot if she really wasn't, I don't think. As we study the rest of chapter 2, Rahab plays a major role. But the lessons that we will learn from Rahab go much deeper for us today. The life of Rahab is so powerful and filled with meaning that, listen, that she is only one of 2 women mentioned in the book of Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, Hall of Faith. The only other one is Sarah. That's it. Let's see how Rahab touches our hearts today. Now we're gonna continue on in next lesson in that, but I think this is an exciting lesson, learning about Shittim and the history of it behind it, and how God puts them in Shittim, getting ready to go over. Satan knows they're going over. I mean, he knows they're getting ready to go. So he plans this curse, and the curse doesn't work. God overrules Satan's plan of cursing the Jews, and he has Balaam instead bless the Jews. Well, they didn't like that, so now they come up with a plan on how to get God to curse his own, not curse, but get God to punish his own people. And you know what? It worked. It worked. They got the children of Israel to started committing whoredoms, and it was because of Balaam. Balaam was probably angry at God because God wouldn't let him make any money, and overruled his decisions, and therefore we see the work of the enemy. The enemy is desperate. He knows they're going over the Jordan River, and he wants to try to stop it or hinder it. And that's basically what happened, and it worked. But still, God is going to bring them over anyway. Satan's not going to win this thing. All right, we're going to continue next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.